Welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. This video is a list of my top 10 sci-fi and top 3 fantasy books of all time. There's not going to be any spoilers in any of these, I promise. And sorry if I'm a bit tired today. Someone decided not to sleep last night. It was my child. And yeah, she's going to have a little cameo here later because she had a long nap this morning, meaning that she's not going to sleep in her nap this afternoon. So I'm going to be doing this video while she is in the room. Let's see how this goes. Okay, first of all though, I am not, she is. First of all, I am not including any post-apocalyptic fiction in this list because that's a separate list. I read that much post-apocalyptic fiction that it's its own list, and I'm doing that later in the year. This is sci-fi though from all sub-genres except for post-apocalyptic and romance. We've got comedy, military action, pulp, kind of a literary science fiction. There isn't really any hard science fiction because those usually aren't like my favorite. I usually rate those pretty highly, like a 4, like a, you know, I've read Seven Eves, but I never really ever kind of make those, they never really hit like 5 stars for me. Anyway, I'm going to go through them now. Let me know if any of these are in your top 10 or top 20, or if you hate them, that's fine too. And most importantly, based on my favorites, can you recommend anything similar to me? I like aliens a lot, and I don't like YA. Do not recommend me YA, please. YA is not my jam. Anyway, so I'm going to start this off with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. So you can find my review of the 4th book in this series a couple weeks ago. So when it first came out in 2014, I very much fell in love with this book. It's about a young woman who signs on to a wormhole building spaceship crew, and the novel is kind of episodic chapters featuring life on this ship with her and all of her crewmates, some of which are aliens. There's a lot of explanation into the aliens culture, like all the different alien cultures and their biology, things like that. It's got a really great balance though between this kind of exposition on the aliens and action and, you know, thoughtful concepts. But this book also has really great characters and interesting arcs, whether they're aliens or not. And her prose is just lovely. Like Becky Chambers, I can't think of anything that's very similar to because it's very unique in its genre, I think. The next one on my list, these aren't in any particular order, like these aren't in my top 10 in order, they're just my top 10. So, Space Captain Smith by Toby Frost. So I stumbled across someone's review of this on Goodreads a few years ago, and I decided to give it a shot because it sounded quite funny. Now I own all 6 of them. I don't know if you can see them on my shelf, but I've got them all up there. They're kind of steampunky in that it's an alternate history where colonial Britain has, you know, made it into space, but that's as far as that goes. I would not consider this steampunk at all. It's just kind of the aesthetic kind of fits it because they're still kind of in a 18th century or 19th century kind of, you know, outfits and that kind of thing. It's really interesting. Anyway, the story follows a man named, surprise, surprise, Space Captain Smith as he gets his first commission on his first spaceship. He brings his best friend, an alien named Surok, who's clearly based on a predator, and he has a pilot who's an escaped AI sex bot. I thought the latter plot about the AI was going to be kind of stereotypical or kind of like go in an expected direction, but it really didn't, and I really appreciated how much arc and personality that she had. In fact, I think she has a bigger arc in the story than the titular character. The rest of the novel is so funny. It's full of lots of funny references and allusions to all types of sci-fi media, like Dune. The 2nd book's pretty much focused on Dune. It's also really funny in its own right as well. I've only read 4 out of 6 of them because I'm trying to savor them. Like, I limit myself to like once every 6 months because I just want to draw them out a bit longer. So I'd say in terms of similarity, it's similar to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's got that tongue-in-cheek kind of absurdist British humor that I really like. This one takes it a bit further, I'd say. I liked Hitchhiker's Guide, but it wasn't my favorite. But these, I just adore them. It could be because I love one of the main characters and I wish he was my space boyfriend, even though he's like a weird alien. The next book I'm going to talk about is part 4 of Tanya Huff's Confederation series, Valor's Trial. There are 8 books, 9 books? 8 books in this series, and you know, part 1 and part 2 are fantastic. Part 3 is a little slow. Part 5 and then the Peacekeeper books that follow, which are also part of the series, they're all solid 4 stars, but this one is my absolute favorite. So I'm not going to tell you what this one's about because it kind of spoils the other ones, but I'm going to say that the series follows, it's a military sci-fi that follows Torrin Care, who's a space marine, and her crew of Terrans and aliens. They go on various missions, but they're all the missions are interconnected by one similar thing. And by the third book, you're like, why is this showing up again? And then you realize that, oh, it's an overarching kind of thing that ties all the stories together. Anyway, it's a step down in violence from like Starship Troopers, like the movie, but these are definitely action-packed books. They're full of lots of banter between military people, which is my favorite kind of banter. There's really, really well-developed alien cultures that I absolutely adore, and there's a lot of memorable characters. There's a lot of memorable locales as well. She sends you some really fun things. There's a derelict ship in the second one named Big Yellow that I adore. And anyway, you really learn to love and grow with the characters as you go through the series, and it's just so well done and so much fun. It also didn't help for me that Torrin was a woman because there's not a lot of military sci-fis featuring women. The next two I'm going to talk about is Jade Darcy. We got Jade Darcy and the Affair of Honor, and Jade Darcy and the Zen Pirates. Both are part of the Rehumanization of Jade Darcy series. Yes, there's a lot of this by Stephen Golden and Mary Mason. I adore pulp sci-fi. I adore it. So these like mass market paperbacks you can get for like $2 at a used bookstore. Like $2. I buy them solely for the cover. Like this one I obviously bought because, I mean, look at her. Like, come on. Most of these random books that I buy for $2 tend to be like 3-star reads. But I've come across some hidden gems, and this, I tell you, is a hidden gem. Jade Darcy is amazing. It has the weird alien cultures that, of course, you've seen through the other books that I've mentioned that I love. But it's got a really strong female character who's strong as both a fighter, a trauma victim, and a person struggling to find herself. She's very well-rounded, very relatable, very likable. And, you know, a big part of her arc is her rehumanization, which doesn't come from her falling in love with some guy. It comes from friendship, like, with a woman. And I was like, what? You never, ever see that. That's never a thing. It's just so good. And the second book's really fun, too. It's a little slower, but it has the sexiest non-sex scene that I've ever read. Like, I was like, how does this exist? Anyway, I'm devastated there's only 2 of these. I'm absolutely devastated. I really wish that there was like 50 of them. But then again, you know, maybe they wouldn't be so good if there were so many. Okay, enough about that. The next one I'm going to talk about is The Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley. Cameron Hurley is awesome. She's like gritty and gross and visceral. Things are always like oozing and leaking, and there is shit and blood and gore everywhere in her books and puke. But her novels are so unique and so fascinating. She's really great at creating these very complex plots that keep you wondering the whole time. Anyway, this one is about, well, it's about some spaceships in space. These ships are massive though. They are the size of worlds, and they are dying. So our main character, Zan, wakes up and is told that she's one of the only people that can board one of these ships, and it's the only ship that's going to, you know, survive. But she isn't sure who to trust in this situation. It's kind of confusing. It's hard to explain without spoiling it or ruining it for you. It's so immersive and it's so satisfyingly confusing. I wouldn't say that The Stars Are Legion is one of her most accessible works, but it's my favorite of all that I've read so far. Her short story collection, Meet Me in the Future, I think is a good place to start for Cameron Hurley because it's short stories, so there's different styles she's got going on. I also like The Light Brigade a lot. That one's good as well. That one's kind of confusing as well because it deals with like time travel and stuff, or time jumping, but this one's just, it's just something you've never read before. So, the next I'm going to talk about is a classic sci-fi king, and that is Alan Dean Foster. I'm going to talk about his founding of the Commonwealth trilogy. I love Alan Dean Foster. I went to Arizona a few years ago, and we did a road trip down there, and we were driving near the town where Alan Dean Foster lives. This is not a secret. It's in his bio, what city he lives in Arizona. And I was like, oh, can we drive through his town? Like, what if he's like outside his house and I can be like, hey man, can you sign my books? And my husband was like, no. He's like, no. He's like, we're not going to go stalk ADF. He calls him ADF because I buy so many of his books that whenever I come back from his bookstore, my husband's like, did you buy some more ADF books? And I'm just like, no. Okay, so another bunch of books relating to my favorite theme of alien cultures. Alan Defoster has written many, many, many novels, but his Commonwealth novels are probably the biggest collection kind of in his universe. He's got this collection like the Pip and Flinks novels, which are like this ongoing, I don't know if they're ongoing, but there's a lot of them about this one character and his pet mini dragon. Those are pretty good, but my favorite is this trilogy called The Found in the Commonwealth, which takes place, these all take place about 100 years apart. And they deal with how the Commonwealth of Earth and its alien allies, the Franks, took place, like how they built their alliance. What I really liked was how he's showing that an alliance of this magnitude between two very disparate cultures would not happen overnight. It took hundreds of years to form this, and I really like that he does this using this trilogy. So all three of the novels are a little different. Like the first one, Phylogenesis, is a first contact novel. I mean, it's not the first contact novel in this universe. That would be this one, Nor Crystal Tears, which has the most amazing cover I've ever seen, or one of the most amazing covers I have ever seen, and it's really good. Anyway, this one is kind of similar because it's a human and a alien guy, Franks, that are forced to work together and learn about one another. So it's kind of one of those like aliens and humans learning about each other's weird quirks kind of novel. It's really fun. And then we've got Dirge, which features Chris Pratt holding a Pokeball. And this one is different small little vignettes about this massive, important intergalactic conflict. And so the vignettes revolve around kind of this war and people's different perspectives on it, different things that happened in it. It's kind of like World War Z in a way, like different kind of snippets. And then we've got Due Eternity's Dawn, which is the third, and this one's more character-focused novel, focusing on this woman, I can't remember her name, because I read this a long time ago, Feniel, focusing on this woman named Feniel and her work averting a cultural crisis between humans and the Franks. So, I love all three of these books. They're really fun to read. I'm pretty sure I read all of them all in one sitting because I was addicted to them. Alan Defoster is one of my favorite authors. Now we have a classic sci-fi powerhouse, and that's Samuel Delany. Samuel Delany was decades ahead of his time. Decades. His sci-fi is literature. No, it's heavy and deep and thematically resonant and poignant. He's absolutely fantastic. Babel 17, Empire Star, and Nova, I'd say, are his most approachable books. Dahlgren is his like infinite jest level intense book that I have read, but I do not recommend it to people as a starting point for Samuel Delany because it's very long and very deep. Then we have The Fall of the Towers. I mean, there's other ones too. This one, it's one of his first works. I think it's actually might have been his first book. It's a little rougher than his later novels, but I really, really like it. It's more like three related novellas than one big book. But the themes and characters and the strange creatures kind of all tie it together into one. He just writes in this beautiful lyrical style that is both classical and unconventional at the same time. His works are all deeply intelligent and very enjoyable, and I highly recommend Samuel Delany if you haven't read any Samuel Delany. And then I'm going to jump from Samuel Delany to John DeChancy and talk about Starrigger. This is nonsense. This book is absolutely nonsense, and I absolutely adore it. It's about transport trucks that drive on a space highway, and it's ridiculously fun. I'm sure the highway isn't as crazy as Rainbow Road from Mario Kart, but I always kind of pictured it that way. Weird aliens galore, of course. Absurd situations. You have to have a certain sense of humor and tolerance for meandering to enjoy this. Clearly I do. I loved this book from the get-go. I mean, it has its flaws. It's a bit dated. The second two books are not nearly as interesting as the first. But it's got like a time travel paradox. Paradox Alley. But it's a lot of fun. I'm going to actually read the cover of this because you must appreciate it. So Starrigger, Space Truckers, highball in the skyway between the stars. There's no life like the wandering life of a star driver. Of course not. Especially when, like Jake, you're guided by an onboard computer that's like a father, literally. But who started the dangerous rumor that Jake had found the ancient map that traced the Skyway to the legendary end of the universe? Not Jake. All he wanted was to be left alone, and now half the galaxy was after him, including the Colonial Assembly, the malevolent Reticulans, the unctuous Wilkes, and his villainous organization, Tattoo. How could I not love this? And I do. Okay, so kind of at the end of this, for sci-fi, now, I could pick Dune, which I like a lot. My first major sci-fi I think my dad gave to me. I could pick Ender's Game, which is also fantastic. I could pick Jonathan Lethem's Amnesia Moon or Girl in Landscape. I could even pick Jurassic Park, which is my favorite movie, I might add. That gets that privilege, so I'm not picking Jurassic Park. But no, I am going to pick Aliens versus Predator, Prey, and War. Are you still with me? I hope so, because these books are awesome. They're just like the movies. They're kind of dumb. They're all action. There's not that much character development, but there's something so fun about this duology that I just can't get enough of it. Maybe it's because I love the main character. I'm going to ruin her name and I apologize. It's Machiko Noguchi. Sorry. She's awesome. Basically, the plot of Prey, which is the first one, is that aliens, like from the movie Alien, attack a settlement on a planet where Noguchi is working. The predators are there in secret to hunt them for one of the rituals. I mean, if you've seen Alien vs. Predator, you understand this. If you haven't, then you're missing out because that movie's really fun. But then a predator, so we got the aliens attacking, a predator teams up with a human and trains her basically to become a predator. And then in book 3, it's about her rejecting the predator lifestyle and coming back to humans. Okay. The third one has one of the best fight scenes in this type of novel I have ever read in my entire life. When I read it, I actually went back and read it again. The novels, they're just fun. Like, if you like the movies, like if you love Alien and Predator movies, you will like these books. They're a blast. And I mean, there's minor dated issues with them, I'd say, but very minor. I'm pretty sure these books are from like 99. Like they're not that old. So yeah, if you like the movies, you'll like these books, I'm pretty sure. Alien vs. Predator is one of my favorite movies. I will admit that with no embarrassment whatsoever. If you're curious, my top 5 movies of all time would be Jurassic Park, Alien vs. Predator, Mad Max Fury Road, Pride and Prejudice, the Keira Knightley version, because Keira Knightley, and Amélie, the French movie from like 2001. So, and my favorite series of movies is obviously Star Wars. Come on, I'm like one of those people that watched Clone Wars when it was like on television. And yeah, anyway, one caveat about this series: do not read Hunter's Planet. So it's very misleading because Hunter's Planet is supposed to be the second one because it even says it on here. It's the sequel. But it's by a different author. The tone is all wrong. The novel is fun, but it doesn't feel the same. And the first scene from this book is actually repeated in War, the third one. Probably because the publishers realized that nobody liked this one and just like made the original author, because this is Steve Perry, made him do another one. Or I don't know, probably some complex thing. I mean, these books, they just pumped them out in the 90s. So you can read this one, but consider it more like a little fan fiction. I will say there is a part in this book where predators fight a T-Rex. It's worth reading just for that, but it's not worth reading as part of this series. Okay. One of the ones I was going to have on the list was City of Saints and Madmen by Jeff Vandermeer, but I moved that to another list that I'm going to talk about later because I've got enough on this list. I am going to talk my top 3 fantasy because I haven't read as much fantasy. I will not be verbose, I promise. I've got the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. If you didn't expect this, then you should read this because this book is fantastic. The trilogy is amazing. I don't usually cry in books. I rarely do. But this one had me just like, oh, at the end of it. It's so good. The characters and the world building are just fantastic. I explain the magic in this book to people all the time because it's so cool. And she plays with tense in a really interesting way because she uses second person for one of it, which really works. I mean, some people say it takes them a while to get into it. I mean, it kind of does. But I don't know. I love the second person. I think this is an example of how when second person can be done very well. I just can't with this. She's fantastic. You should read it. One I don't have here is Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. I keep asking for this for Christmas, but no one ever buys it for me. I am 35. I could buy it myself, but I'd rather spend my money on books I haven't read. Anyway, Red Country is set in the same world as the First Law trilogy, but in this book there are more women. That's nice. So there's a female lead in this one who is awesome. The plot is really fun. The character from the First Law trilogy is present in this book in quite a large way. The ending was different than I expected, which was really cool. It's a long, drawn-out quest novel that I appreciate, and there's a cute, slow burn love story that I really liked. The characters are fun because they screw up, they make mistakes, they're dumb sometimes. I really enjoyed it. I keep meaning to buy it for my shelves. And it has that typical gritty violence of Joe Abercrombie that you'd expect as well. I really liked it. I think I like it better than, oh, obviously I like it better than the original trilogy. You want to come up here? And then the next one, the last one I'm going to talk about is, where is it? Of course I'm going to talk about Gideon the Ninth, but I'm not going to talk about it because if you want to hear about that, you can listen to my October book review for Gideon and my January book review for Harrow the Ninth, because I talk about them enough in those, and you can check those out there. But I love Gideon the Ninth. I also want to do a quick shout out to Malazan. I read the final book in the Malazan series in 2011 when it came out. So it's been quite a while since I've even touched the books. I only own 4 of them because of the library. And someone has my original version of Gardens of the Moon. Like, I have an original copy and I want it back because that cover is really cool. And it's definitely a series I'm going to read again. I'd probably say it's my favorite series, but it's just so long and so complex. I've only read it once and I really only have time to read it once. No, not Hunter's Planet. This is the bad one. This one. This one. There you go. Look who's back. You haven't seen her in a while. So yeah, those are my top 10 sci-fis, my top 3 fantasies, and this is my my little alien, right? Yeah. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you share any of the favorite books here or favorite authors, or if you just think my baby is cute and loud. She's very loud.